you all so much for joining us today. My name is Kiara Hudlin, and I am the Education and Fellowship Manager here at New Village Arts. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I manage all of our educational programs, classes, workshops, hiring teaching artists, handling in-school programming, and also managing the Dia Hurston Fellowship that provides training, mentorship, and resources to BIPOC theater artists and students around San Diego. I am also an actor, a performer. You may have seen me in Singing in the Rain, directed by Dr. AJ Knox himself. Yes, that part. I was also in 1222 Oceanfront, A Black Family Christmas, and you may have seen me in Chicken and Biscuits at Oceanside Theater Company. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here moderating this conversation between two creatives associated deeply with NVA's production of the 39 Steps. Today we have JenMarie Landig and Dr. AJ Knox. Thank you. To tell you a little bit about the artist whose work is surrounding us today, JenMarie Landig is a multidisciplinary artist from Orange, California. From a young age, she trained in dance, but now you can often find her traversing through SoCal and sharing her love for photography, writing, and movement. Her choice to emphasize style and design and connect it with emotion and the exploration of human connections sets her work from the rest. Through this, she creates an avenue for storytelling that can make her work evoke feelings of familiarity and nostalgia. Give it up for JenMarie. Now, Dr. AJ Knox is no stranger to New Village Arts. Not only has he directed some incredible shows here, for instance, Little Shop of Horrors, Murder for Two, Singing in the Rain, and Avenue Q, he has also performed on the stage here in Doubt, A Parable, Around the World in 80 Days, and the 1940s Radio Hour. On top of directing and acting, AJ is also a husband, a father, an illustrator, writer, storyteller, educator, and the president of NVA's Board of Directors. Give it up for AJ Knox. Here at New Village Arts, we seek to draw alignment between all aspects of our programming. As we developed the 39 Steps with AJ, we worked with JenMarie to develop her exhibition, Cultivating Dreams in Unlikely Places, that highlights recent bodies of her own work while still drawing inspiration from the 39 Steps. With that being said, we are very pleased to have these two in conversation to explore their individual practices in the process that has brought them here together at this moment. We'll go through some questions and then we'll open it up to the audience for more. Thank you. All right. Starting off, we'll start with AJ. Tell us about yourself and your areas of expertise. Tell us about your journey as a creative.
Okay. Thank you, Kiki. You summarized it pretty well. I've been doing creative work literally as long as I've had consciousness, I think. I started drawing at the age of 2. I was the youngest member of the Southern California Cartoonist Society at 8 years old, surrounded by a bunch of octogenarians. And I got into theater in high school and pursued that through college, got my PhD in theater, moved back here, got a job stage managing at SeaWorld. And then I got a job here as the marketing director at New Village Arts, and that was about 10 years ago. And I no longer work for New Village Arts. I'm the president of the board, but I've been involved with NBA for about a decade now.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been in the works for a long time.
I've been begging Christiane to let me direct this play, I think for probably 8 years.
Wow.
So I'm glad I finally got to do it.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. And JenMarie, tell us about yourself and your areas of expertise and your journey as a creative.
Thank you, Kiki, and thanks to New Village Arts for having me, and for AJ for trusting my vision with the photography to join the show. I feel really honored knowing that this is 8 years in the making and somehow I slid in right now. I am a multidisciplinary artist, as Kiki said. I work in the areas of photography, writing, and dance. For photography, I am a commercial architecture photographer and fine art. And then during the pandemic, I started doing self-portraits. So that has blended now into doing organic forms, people with architectural elements. And for writing, I'm a personal essayist. And for dance, I have a foundation in ballet and mostly have focused on flamenco and Afro-Brazilian, which has led to my entrepreneurial career where I teach workshops that blend my dance background and training with my mindfulness certification, and I call it mindful movement. And my journey, I'm similar to AJ. I've been dancing and writing for as long as I can remember. You were the youngest in your cartoon club. I was the youngest in writing classes, and I was 8 years old with high schoolers. I just loved writing. And the mindful movement work is more recent, but it feels like a perfect blend of all of my experience and background. And the photography started because I have a lot of artists in my family. And my dad went to art school, and he was a painter, but they made him take a photography class, so he bought a 1976 Nikon film camera. And he luckily saved it, even though he did not like photography. He saved the camera, and it sat in storage for years. And when I was about 17, he pulled it out and said, "Here, you might like this." And hearing that shutter click and the film advance, just those sounds were so sexy. And that was it. That's the beginning of the end, and the rest is history.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Now let's talk a little bit more about processes. AJ, I know from our conversations that there was a lot to be interpreted as you developed the composition of each scene. How was it building this production in our present day while still staying true to the original concepts of the play, film, book, all the previous adaptations?
Yeah, so the script for the 39 Steps, all those big wild set pieces like the train chase or the plane hunting it down, things like that, they're just written as, a wild train chase ensues. And it's up to the director and the actors to kind of figure out, and the designers, of course, to figure out what that means. I took a lot of inspiration from Buster Keaton. If you watch old Buster Keaton films, he uses the frame of the film like almost like a diorama. So it's very flat, it's very two-dimensional. He finds a lot of humor in kind of flat pictures. And so I used the proscenium frame in kind of a similar way. I wanted to kind of stage these almost like if you just took a silhouette of the scene at any moment, you would get the joke, you would see the humor. So, turning the benches into train cars, just a simple thing to kind of like shift the perspective and change what we understood about the world. And then I tried to make it so that anything that we could achieve with just the actors, we would do it with the actors. So I tried to get away from too much like anything pre-recorded with them. That's why all the radio bits were, the actor live on stage. And so I just really wanted it to feel like these actors were bringing this manic show to life. And
Yes, it works. I think it's great. Yes, and the train car scene, it's some of my favorite scenes because you really you get it. The picture is set. They make it happen, and it's just them. I think that's great. And JenMarie, I'd love to talk more about your process here as well. Can you walk me through how you go about building a body of work? How did you decide the mediums, the concept, etc.? And how was the process different this time as you curated this exhibition, thinking about the 39 steps?
Yeah, so I would say that how I usually create is actually pretty different than what I did for the 39 steps. Typically, the way I create, my philosophy is that I am a channel or a vessel for creativity that flows through me. And I try to put my ego aside and just imagine that this is some bigger creative force that goes through me. And then I combine that with my meditation and mindfulness practice. So I'll often go into deep meditation and visions will come to me, or bubbling up from my subconscious will come the project I want to work on and what images I want to capture. So that's typically how I work. And then I also, since I'm a writer, I actually see a lot of visuals in words. So when I'm writing, I actually will see pictures in my head, and that will often translate into, oh, I'm gonna do this photo shoot that accompanies my writing. And that often also translates into I might be inspired by a song lyric or just a quote or something. I'm very inspired by words. And then the last way that I create, which ties into my architecture photography, is that I'm very inspired by space. And not only the lines and the geometries and the visual forms and vectors, I also really like to feel a space and see how I feel in it and ponder, is this a gendered space? Is this an inclusive space? What is this space saying? And I especially love creative spaces. And there's this quote that always sticks with me by Carl Jung. I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it's something along the lines of, the mind plays with the thing it loves. And so I find my eye is constantly roaming, and I'm constantly thinking when I'm in a space of how would I capture this. So that's how I'm usually creating work. And so when the script of 39 Steps was given to me, I was really excited because I've never created anything in that way. And it kind of taps into my writing. I thought, I'm gonna take this script. I've seen the Alfred Hitchcock film many, many years ago, but I'm not gonna rewatch it. And I could probably find the play on YouTube, you know, all these things, but I said, no, I'm just going to sit with this script. And so I read the script many times, I wrote notes and scribbled all over it, I slept on it, and really what emerged for me were the stage direction and the screen description. So it will talk about, it's a very foggy night in the Scottish Highlands. You know, there's these crazy shadows when they're in that, I forget his name, but the evil man's, the professor, yes, the professor's house. You know, they have these wild dance parties and all you see is the shadows. And you'll probably remember from the play that windows are a very big theme as well, which is one of my favorite scenes when they're in Scotland and all trying to contort themselves and climb through the window to escape. So all these elements really informed how I wanted to curate the work. And one of the photos at the front is shot on, I purposely shot it on a very foggy day with grainy film. And there's also, you'll see if you look at the art, there's shapes and shadows and a lot of the work and a lot of windows. So that's how I ended up building this curation here. And I won't go too far in the next piece because we'll probably talk about it, but I also let the themes of the play really inform the story I wanted to tell with these pictures. With, you know, the play is set in 1935, the Great Depression, the rise of Nazi Germany, there were race riots in Harlem. I mean, there was so much going on. And the intention with the book was, let's have some escapist diversion because we're all experiencing dramatic collective anxiety. And how can we find courage, and how can we let wonder and play and even absurdity blossom in these really uncertain times? And so that was a bit of a theme of how I progressed the story on the walls as well.
Yes, thank you for that. One of my favorite things about connecting with other creatives is getting to learn their process, because everybody's different. How do you create your best work? How do you make things happen? So I really appreciate that. One thing that came up for me in our conversations is the idea of the protagonist, or the very male-centered way in which stories can be told. JenMarie, can you tell me more about how this influenced some of your decision-making when curating your exhibition?
Yes, definitely. So, interestingly, when I was reading the play, I originally started having ideas of photographs of men, because Hannah is the lead character, it's a man. And I actually did a shoot with a local percussionist at this cool architecture site, and it had all these neat shadows, and I love these photos. But the more I sat with it, I thought, no, this is actually not really in alignment with my values. I've been working most of my life in gender equity and social justice, so I said, I want to subvert this. How about we take something that's typical mainstream, having the man be the protagonist, and let's make this all about women, and have only women on the walls, and the women are telling the story and advancing the plot versus the man. And so that was just a little twist on my part on how I wanted to bring in some of myself into this.
Awesome. And AJ, noticing this pattern within the writing, what choices did you make to change the narrative and bring power to the female characters in the script?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple ways that the show plays with gender. The first one is obviously the two clown characters. They're not written to be cast by men or women, so we auditioned, anyone who wanted to go for that role. Actually, one of our understudies is a woman. She's going to go up in a couple of weeks on a understudy performance, and obviously, if need be, she'll step into the role. So I got into clowning in college and kind of have revisited it a few times throughout my career. The really interesting thing about clowns to me is that they're gender neutral, they're kind of sexless, they're just kind of like, they're just embodiments of the pursuit of fun. And so to that point, it didn't really matter who those clowns were. And even, Kenny and Reedon, who you saw today, I didn't have either of them shave their facial hair, because even when they're playing women, it didn't matter to me. It was like, we understand you're kind of your neutral base character as your clown is yourself, and then you're putting on all these costumes and these accents and voices and playing these characters, men and women. And then also like a rich history of British drag going back, beyond Monty Python. But then also in the script, the three primary female characters are kind of written as these archetypes, right? The first one, Annabella, is this very like femme fatale. We really played her kind of right in that lane. Margaret, the Scottish lass, is just kind of this hypersexual, wilting flower type, and we kind of played her right down the middle. But Pamela, I really wanted to make her a little bit more empowered. The script kind of has her kind of being dragged along by Hannah in the second act, and I wanted to give her a little bit more initiative. So, for instance, the fence scene, as they're trying to navigate the fence, it just says, they get stuck on the fence. They can't figure out how to do it. So it's up to the director and the actors to figure it out. And I wanted to end that with her showing Hannah how to get over the fence, like, you idiot. You got us into this mess. Now here's how to get over the fence. And then even like little things like in the hotel, in the script it says, he drinks his whiskey, she drinks her milk. And I liked the idea of him, having one hand with the sandwich and one hand with the milk. He goes to hand it to her, he's stuck, and she snatches the whiskey and downs it. Kind of takes a little bit of power, takes a little wind out of his sails. So yeah, I didn't want her to be this kind of demure, woman who needed protection. I wanted to give her a little bit more agency. So just these little adjustments to what the characters are doing, that it doesn't step on the show, it doesn't step on the plot in any way, but it just tweaks the way we think about these characters.
Right, yes, thank you. And touching base on that, about like clowning and the amount of play, something I really enjoyed about the 39 Steps is the amount of play, clowning, and the pursuit of fun and silliness. How important is the power of play in your work? How do you as a creative hold it in tandem with the darkness in an increasingly polarized world?
All right, heavy. Well, okay, so I think there's nothing more important to not losing your absolute mind than having a sense of humor, and trying to pursue fun. And so, again, going back to like clowning, the number one rule of the clown is, and if you study clowning, you learn that we all have a clown inside of us, and it's basically our pre-socialized self. It's the version of ourself that isn't worried about the way we look, the way we sound, the way we might be perceived by others. And it is strictly the pursuit of fun. And that is, if you've ever seen a toddler, it's that. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just gonna have fun, I'm just gonna do what I want. I'm not gonna worry what other people are gonna think about. And so what I worked with these actors on is that, if the audience is with you, play with them, have fun with it, relish in it. pursue that fun. If they're not feeling, because it's a comedy, every day's gonna be a little different. If they're not with you, connect with each other and find the fun that you can have with each other, and eventually we as an audience will kind of cue into that and lean in and wanna know what's so fun and kind of engage with it a little bit more. But to me, yeah, it's just such an important part of life beyond this show, and particularly this show. It's, you have to have the characters. The actors need to be pursuing fun. It's very meta-theatrical, but if the actors are pursuing fun, it becomes really fun for us to watch them. And this goes back, if you ever watch Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin or any of the old kind of classic clowns, that's what they were doing. Charlie Chaplin could do a bit with a cigarette butt for 10 minutes because he's just having fun, like pushing it around, playing with it, and it becomes fascinating. You'd be like, what is so intriguing about this cigarette butt?
Right.
But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And JenMarie, the same question for you. How important is the power of play in your work?
Yes, very important. Like AJ mentioned, it's about the inner child and beginner's mind and approaching everything with wonder and curiosity and humility. That is a basic tenet of my work. I also think that there is a healing when you are actively engaged in play and self-reflection and pleasure. Not only is it healing for yourself, but it actually puts out chemicals to everybody, and there's a healing collectively. I research a lot of neuroscience for my mindfulness work, and there's a lot of really interesting studies about this. And so I think about that a lot. You know, if I'm going to put something out that has that element, hopefully that's rippling beyond me. Start with the self and then go beyond. So I definitely think about that a lot. And then I also think about light and dark a lot. I've recently just published an article about this, that we actually are a very heliocentric society, and it's very much about getting to the light, be lighthearted, you know. But there is so much value and power in darkness, and actually all of creativity starts in darkness and creation. Thinking about the caterpillar, the womb, composting soil, I mean, just the oyster and the pearl, so many things happen in the dark. And so we have to, I think, live more in balance and have this full, I like to say, full spectrum living, because you're not going to experience the play and the joy of that if you don't have the contrasting elements. So I think all of that influences much of my work. And also the last thing I'll say, it's really about the journey and not the outcome. You know, if you're not having fun in what you're doing, it's not worth it. And I think audiences will know. And even though I think a lot of my work looks pretty serious, when I'm on set or when I'm on a job location or I'm doing a photo shoot, I try to have so much fun and bring in a lot of laughter and yeah, just make it a fun experience and worthwhile, and all about pursuing pleasure and joy.
Thank you, thank you. On the topic of fun, everyone in the 39 steps had various parts to play and did a wonderful job of differentiating between each of them. How do you feel this relates to us as creatives and as people today?
I think that relates, I might not exactly answer that question, but I'm going to tell you what's coming to my mind.
Yes.
I think that relates because we're often wearing many masks.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm a daughter, I was a wife, I'm a student, I'm a career professional, AJ's a husband, you know, father. I mean, there's so many roles we play. So sometimes I think we can lose sight of who we really are. Who are we when you take away mask after mask after mask? And then when you get to that vulnerable place, can you actually connect with the other person? If we're both maskless, that is a very terrifying place to be often, but that's where authenticity is, and that's where often love and trust and so many wonderful things are. And living a life, I think, that's most in alignment with who you are and your values and your purpose. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's what I think of when I think about multiple roles and masks.
Yes, the hats we wear. Yes, all the things. Yes, I agree. AJ?
Again, I don't think I'll probably answer this explicitly, but the quote I started out rehearsal with for our actors, it comes from my favorite acting book called Notes to an Actor. A lot of acting books can either be really like woo-woo, like you feel the spirit of the god of theater moving through you, and that's how you become an actor. Or it can be really like you show up 30 minutes before the show, you sit down, it can be really prescriptive, and there's nothing really in the middle. And this book is called Notes to an Actor. I really love it, but he has a chapter on comedy, and his first note is, it's okay to be over the top if you have a bottom. Meaning, it's okay to get wacky and weird and surreal if it's rooted in something real. A lot of writers, when they're creating characters, will call this, even for comedy characters, they'll call it the wound. What is your character's wound? What is the thing that grounds them in reality, the pain? And so I told the actors, I said, for all of these wacky, wild characters, including the clowns, the kind of default characters, what's the reality? What's the reality of your circumstance? Play that, and then you can kind of expand. Walt Disney also had kind of a similar quote where he talked about animation, where he teaches illustrators. He said, we have to learn the rules, and very, very much paraphrasing here. We have to learn the rules before we can break them in animation. Animation can do anything, but you have to study, life drawing. You have to go to the zoo and draw animals. You have to study architecture. You have to know what the real thing is before you can dismantle it and turn it into something weird and fanciful and imaginative. So yeah, that's kind of how we approach that in terms of the reality of those characters.
Right on, yes. And I know we've talked about this a little bit. I know you've mentioned Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, but who are some more of your biggest inspirations when it comes to your work and your practice?
I'll just speak kind of explicitly to comedy, as that's what this is, and that's kind of where I root myself. Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin. Monty Python. My dad introduced me to Be on the Fringe, which is another British group with Dudley Moore and Peter Cook. They have a great sketch, which my dad used to misquote all the time, about a one-legged man auditioning for the role of Tarzan. And it's, look it up, it's very fun. But that kind of surrealist British humor I've always really liked. I really love I Think You Should Leave on Netflix, which is Tim Robinson, who's kind of a modern comedian. But yeah, I find comedy in general to be very inspiring of all types.
That's
yeah,
real.
I'm kind of I don't hold a lot of gates in terms of comedy. I try to absorb it all.
Yes, awesome. And JenMarie, what about you? Who are some of your biggest inspirations?
Oh, and my wife.
Shout out.
Always shout out to the wife. Well, I'll pick up on the British. One of my influences is Oscar Wilde. I've loved him since I was young. He's witty and eloquent, and actually, I find a lot of writers are very inspirational to me, even though I'm a visual artist primarily. I would recommend Maggie Nelson and Roxane Gay. Their essays are incredible. I'm also very inspired by activists. So Tricia Hersey has a nap ministry. So she encourages rest for collective liberation and restoration and dream space. Highly recommend her work. Audre Lorde, I'm not free till all women are free. So these people I think really are in my work implicitly, and then maybe more explicitly, architects. I'm very inspired by architects. One of my favorites is Richard Neutra, and if you like architecture, he has a lot of work right in LA. And he was also an activist, which is why I find him very inspiring. He was building after World War II, and as the Japanese were being released from the camps, no one would rent to Japanese, let Japanese families buy homes, and he was explicitly making homes for the Japanese community and families. So I find that very inspiring. And the last person I'll mention is Julius Schulman. He's one of the first and most famous architecture photographers. His work, even though he was photographing in mid-century, just is timeless. If you look at it today, it's absolutely stunning, gorgeous. Every time, and you know, when you see a photo by Julius Schulman, you know it's his. And so I always aspire to be following in his footsteps.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. This has been a great conversation so far. Before I move on to my last question and we open it up to the audience, what is next for both of you? What can we look forward to?
I don't have anything on the docket theatrically, so I'm actually looking forward to a little break. I just continue. My day job is creative, so I get to keep doing that. And then I'm on the board here, so I'm going to keep working with NVA. So I guess anything you see at NVA is kind of in my future. Yeah, even though I may not be directly involved in it.
Well, I'm directly involved with NVA. What's coming up for me is I have a series of office hours here at New Village Arts. For the first 2 weeks of May, I'll be hunkering down, working here, so feel free to stop by. We can have a private tour, chat about the work, chat about anything. I love to chat. We haven't announced it yet, but I'm going to be doing a 3-part series here of my mindful movement work on the intersection of mindfulness, movement, and creativity. So really hope to see you there. I think that would be really fun. The next thing after that, I've started in a small way compared to my other endeavors, working in video art. And I'm working on my second video art piece. I was just literally came back from the Mojave Desert. We were filming and photographing out there, and that's premiering on June 5th on Zoom. So everyone save the date. And then after that, I'm gonna have an artist residency in Greece. So if you happen to be in Greece in September, come by. But if not, please follow me on Instagram, and you can see the stories and the photos and everything that will be happening there. I'll be exhibiting photography, video art, teaching, and I will be doing a dance performance. So,
awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause to JenMarie and AJ. Thank you both so much. And now